Breaking news this hour, a US official has reportedly confirmed that Washington will be deploying a detachment of special operation forces in Syria. A total of 20 to 30 commandos are expected to be sent to the country under the framework of an advise and assist mission. The anonymous official says the order does not change Obama's previous pledge of no boots on the ground in either Syria or Iraq. Well, just last week, though, a US soldier from a similar detachment in Iraq died during a hostage rescue operation against Islamic State. And earlier this Tuesday, Defense Secretary Ashton Carter confirmed that the US was not going to refrain from ground operations in Iraq against ISIL.
Won't hold back from supporting capable partners in opportunistic attacks against ISIL or conducting such missions directly, whether by strikes from the air or direct action on the ground.
President Obama himself and his administration have made repeated vows that they would not deploy combat forces, neither in Iraq or Syria.
I will not put American boots on the ground in Syria. I will not pursue an open-ended action like Iraq or Afghanistan.
The resolution we've submitted today does not call for the deployment of U.S. ground combat forces to Iraq. It is not the authorization of another ground war.
We are not obviously contemplating returning. We're not contemplating putting boots on the ground.
President Obama has been very clear that American combat troops are not going to be fighting in Iraq again.
Well, for more analysis, we're going to be joined live right now by Jonathan Steele, a columnist for The Guardian on international affairs. Jonathan, hi.
Hi.
So for now, though, it must be said we only have reports that this decision has been taken. Could this deployment of troops be a sign of a full-scale combat mission, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think it's very limited. And we don't know where these people are going to be going. But it sounds as though they may be going to northern Syria, where the Kurdish YPG, the Kurdish militia, are on the offensive against ISIS. And just 3 days ago, John Kerry, the Secretary of State, said we're enhancing our air campaign against Daesh, against ISIL, to try and drive them out of the last 70 miles along the Syrian-Turkish border that they control. So that clearly seems to be the focus, is pushing ISIS out of the Turkish border area. And it's quite a slap in the face for the Turkish government, actually, because they are very worried about the Kurdish militias. In fact, they admitted the other day, the Prime Minister of Turkey admitted that they'd been firing across the border into Syria to try and discourage the YPG militias. And the Americans are now basically telling the Turks, interestingly enough, on the eve of their election, that America is going to help the Kurdish militia.
Jonathan, I appreciate what you're saying, but we've seen the same steps, though, similar steps taken in Iraq. Washington, though, crucially did have permission from the country's government, though, in that case, which is not the case in Syria, as we know. Would you expect any consequences to come out of this decision?
Well, I think they'll obviously be worried. Many people, ordinary Americans, will be worried that this is the beginning of a new ground war in the Middle East. But Obama, as you quoted him earlier in the program, has ruled that out. These things, of course, can be subject to mission creep. We know very well that when the Vietnam War started, President Kennedy talked about advisors, which is exactly what Obama and Ashton Carter are talking about now. They're just advisors. They won't be combat troops. But, of course, it can slip. But I think Obama is aware of that danger, and this is not necessarily going to slip badly into this mission creep.
Do you think that the move will be effective in the operation against Islamic State?
Well, as I say, the Kurdish militias have done pretty well against the Islamic State. They've knocked out 2 of the border crossings that Islamic State used to use, and there's only one left connecting Turkey and Syria that ISIS controls. And if they can knock that out, it would be a major blow to ISIS. So that, I think, is where the focus is. We're not going to see American troops trying to capture Raqqa, the headquarters of the so-called caliphate, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Jonathan, are you surprised about the outcome, if indeed it is confirmed? Were you expecting this at all from Mr. Obama?
Well, I think the trouble is that with the election coming up and the Republicans getting on the warpath, as it were, and sort of saying that there's been leadership collapse in Washington and the president is terribly weak, Obama wants to sort of, you know, do a bit of saber rattling and flexing muscles before he goes out of power in just over a year's time. And so there is this tendency to be more macho and to do more tough-looking things. But as I say, I think it's probably controlled, although it is quite dangerous.